Welcome to a very special bonus episode of Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett. I've been asking you all to send in any questions that you would like me to ask a future guest, but then I realized that those will probably take up too much real estate in those interviews, and time flies in those. So my co-producer Ryan Rosenberg and I decided to record a special Q&A episode with a bunch of these questions. Thank you so much to all of you who wrote in with questions. And for those who haven't, we will be doing this from time to time. So send them on in to yesalsopod@gmail.com and we'll get yours in a future episode. If you like the show, give us a follow and also tell a friend. We would appreciate you spreading the word. And here we go with the Q&A. Hey, Ryan, ready to answer some questions?
I sure am.
All right, cool. The first one is, I'd love to hear what experienced improvisers think the right ratio of practice and performing is for beginner and or intermediate improvisers. Mm-hmm. Great question.
Yeah.
My hunch is there is no actual correct ratio, but as you sort of look at the shape of your improv trajectory, I think in the beginning, things are going to skew a lot more towards practice than shows. Like you maybe do a 9 to 1. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And towards the end, it's the inverse. You're a lot more shows than practice. You're practicing once in a while, if at all,
right,
post your Herald Night career and doing mostly shows.
Yep.
And in the middle, I mean, Herald Night is pretty much like a 1-to-1 ratio, mm-hmm, for at least for Herald teams.
Yeah.
It's not a magic correct formula. I think my answer for students learning or until you feel like you can just do this second nature and you're not thinking about it and you're not nervous for any shows, mm-hmm, to me, the right answer is always get as many reps as you can, whether that's in practice or shows. Mm-hmm. And it depends on what your sort of discomfort tolerance is, whether you skew more towards practice or shows. It's a little more uncomfortable to do shows when you don't feel solid yet. Mm-hmm, right?
For sure. Yeah, totally. I think you nailed it perfectly. In the beginning, you have to do so much practice to even have the shows be any fun.
Right.
Like you have to practice so much with a kind coach who's like, let's keep trying. That's good. Here was the good part. Because if you just go do a show immediately, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to quit improv.
Yeah.
Like everyone else got laughs and I bombed and I can't do this and whatever. So I feel like practice is such a good supportive. It's a new thing that you haven't done before. And it's like public speaking plus comedy. So to have someone help you with that for a while until you can sort of ride the bike on your own, I feel like is so helpful.
And when you're learning to improvise, you don't get to just go off in your room by yourself and do it like a musician does. Like you have to be bad and clunky and awkward in front of people. So mm-hmm, practice groups can practices can take the sting out of the acuteness of the vulnerability.
Yes.
Like if you're being vulnerable in front of a whole audience of strangers, mm-hmm, who just laughed like gangbusters at the team before you, it can be demoralizing and totally make the learning of it feel more painful, mm-hmm, than in practice where you're able to. And I think in practice, because you don't have that added level of nerves of being in front of an audience, I think you're able to learn and integrate the concepts more.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah.
One thing I would also say to it is I wouldn't over practice just to practice. I would, depending on what your goals are, I would say that practicing intentionally is better than practicing with a million groups who are not working on anything.
Yeah.
Because learning bad habits is maybe worse than not learning at all.
Yeah.
There are some things that I am now coaching people where it's oh, we have to untrain a bunch of incorrect crap to be mean, because it was, if there's no goal while you're learning, then what are you really learning?
Right. And practicing with an experienced coach or someone who's more experienced than you, mm-hmm, who can be that outside eye and that diplomatic note giver. It's awkward to give notes to your friends, and also you don't give notes to your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing that I also noticed about, and this is the last thing I'll say, mm-hmm, is that everybody gets the comedy pretty good. People know what's funny. That's why a whole room of amateurs laughs at the same time, you know? But what people don't really get is how to write on their feet. If you've never written a sketch, how would you know how to improvise a scene where the funny thing happens 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, so you kind of have to learn the language of it, and you have to learn the specificity of like what you're doing before you can even attempt it. The comedy comes easy to me. It's the like, how do I even do a scene at all?
Yeah.
That is really hard to learn if you've never done theater or improv specifically.
Yeah, and how do I use my body on stage, and how do I
Totally.
Yeah, how am I being in the theater present? Yeah.
Everybody gets that first laugh.
Right.
Everybody gets the first laugh of their scene, no matter what. Can you do it more times in the scene is what you are practicing, I think.
Yeah. And you've said before that all of your best memories are from practices
100%.
rather than shows. So keep that in mind too. Like practices should be fun and can be like very bonding. And
my Herald team spent, I don't know, 4 times the amount of time practicing to shows. So like that's where the team lived.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
You guys were 4-1.
No, I mean, just like every show is 30 minutes and every practice is 2 hours.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
like, okay.
I will say when I coached Bangarang, at their request, they wanted to practice twice a week. And they were the only team I coached that did that. And they
they're
were
great.
Very great.
Yeah,
So hope that's helpful. And thank you for writing in. All right. Next question. I've been thinking a lot about neurodivergence lately, and it occurred to me that improv is both an outlet for and attraction for many people who are diagnosed or suspecting of their neurodivergence. Yeah. She wants people to speak about how their journey with neurodivergence coincides with their improv experiences. And then she says, I believe that improv has so much to offer those in the neurodivergent arena, and love the idea of making the benefits more known to them. I think ADHD is probably the most obvious one, but I think there is so much more awareness around autism and many, many people considering how their brains are not working in the way that society has forced them to believe they should be. Anywho, I thought I'd throw something out there for you to explore. Yeah, this is so great, and a topic that is close to my heart. I go to a camp that's an integrated camp for people with and without disabilities and people with all different neurotypes. So I have friends all over every spectrum: autism and Down syndrome and traumatic brain injuries. And I have taught improv workshops at camp before, and I'm fascinated by how improv continues, even in that arena where our differences are so much more pronounced. Improv continues to be accessible to everyone and a great equalizer. Like, people are great at it no matter where their brain is, and it is a great outlet. It is a great it's a great venue for different brain types because it is such a philosophy, an art form based on all are welcome. We're not punching down. We're not going to make fun of you. We're going to seek to elevate everybody's ideas. Do you want to speak on?
Yeah, I feel like a big thing with neurodivergence, or one of the big challenges, is that you're so invalidated for so much of your life. And the whole rule of improv is that the first thing you do is say yes. So any idea that someone that might have that is neurodivergent, their scene partner is immediately going to validate them and add to their ideas if it's a good one. And I think that's such a beautiful thing for like anyone who is different in society in any way. You know what I mean? Whether it's sexuality, race, whatever your thing is that has been frustrating.
Yeah.
It's just such a beautiful thing to like, whatever your first idea is, you're going to get supported. People are by nature going to be curious about what you have to say. And I think that can be some of the really hard parts of dealing with that neurodivergence, is feeling different, feeling like people don't want to listen to you, feeling invisible or whatever. And I feel like that's such a awesome thing that it teaches, is like compassion and listening and working together rather than like keeping people separate.
Right. And where different viewpoints are an asset rather than a hindrance, where like if you're on the autism spectrum and you're in a board meeting, maybe people are like frowning on your ideas because they're not exactly what everybody else has said. But in an improv group, you are such a gift because it's like, whoa, that was so outside the box and we wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, there's room for that brilliance. It's not that the
Yes.
idea was any worse. It's usually that the setting is not accepting of the truth or of ideas that are outside of the very manicured bullshit, smaller, simpler, dumber idea.
Right. And I would love to have you speak on, like, you are someone with ADHD,
Yeah.
or you've touched on that.
Yeah,
or
I'm
you
pretty
suspect-
obsessed with it, pretty positive that I have it.
and I am also suspecting of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most improvisers that are really good and really quick, I would say fit like a lot of those they would identify with a lot of the like signifying behaviors or whatever. But definitely to me, it really works for my brain because I need like multiple things going on. Like it's hard for me to sit down and focus like this. So having the scene and then what I'm thinking about outside of the scene and then being able to like switch back and forth and do both of those is really stimulating for my mind when normally I feel like really bored and like can't really focus on just a one-on-one unless it's like really we're really focused,
Right.
you know? So it's really helpful for my brain that like wants to take tangents and wants to think about other things while the thing is going on.
Yeah.
Not instead of, but at the same time. And it allows me to do that in a way that I really find lovely.
You mean like while you're doing the scene, you're in this creative pursuit, but also half of your brain is working on the project of
Yes.
how do I bring back this character or remember this moment for later so I can tie that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It almost mimics the exact way that I'm uncomfortable in real life. And it makes it really comfortable on stage. Like in real life, I'm trying to have a conversation with a neurotypical person and it feels like they want to talk about only the thing we're talking about and they want me to go very slow for me. And I don't want to talk about one subject very slowly. I want to like really connect with whatever we're thinking about. And apparently we're just not, our brains aren't working the same, you know?
Yeah.
And so like the way that maybe I want to connect can sometimes feel like rude or dismissive or not attentive, but really it's like, no, I'm totally with you. I'm just also thinking some other things like, would you be willing to go on the ride with me or are we just here for your way of the conversation?
Yeah.
And so I love improv because it's like, nope, the conversation is what both of us want it to be. It can't really be just one of us because we're building it when I think there's a lot of unwritten rules regularly that you're made to subscribe to that maybe don't make you feel comfortable.
Yeah. And the joy of improv being that each show has its own flavor. So it's not this just modular Lego brick that comes down the conveyor belt and it's the same every time. It's like, ooh, this was a really fast show full of tags. So your brain got to play that way. And then the next one is a little more character based. And yeah, what a gift that like compared to sitting in a bar conversation where, yep, we just spent 30 minutes talking about your grad school degree.
Oh, it's really hard for me.
Yeah. In a show, you'd be able to be inspired by that, take that on a journey, zoom around a world a little bit, then come back to it. Yeah.
And you're with a group of people who want to do that,
Right.
who are, whether or not they're all neurodivergent, this is the norm here.
You're right.
And that feels really lovely.
Yeah, I in my own experience, like I'm a recent person who's like, yeah, I think all these symptoms line up, and like a lot that I didn't know were symptoms, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have that.
You just
too.
think
And
it's
then-
your norm.
Right.
And then you're kind of told that you're weird and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I think you're weird, I get.
I guess, yeah.
Right.
But where I see mine showing up is even in a macro view of improv as a career or as a pursuit and a passion versus stand-up or like writing. Like I've done both of those things, but not to this degree. And
Right.
this to me is like, oh yeah, it's different every night. It's totally spontaneous. That just feels very exciting and stimulating. And the other
Right.
ones feel much more boring and...
For ADHD people who have like a dopamine issue and they need constant novelty and stimulation, it is so much more novel and stimulating than stand-up, where it's like, well, I wrote this between 1 and 30 weeks ago and I'm reciting it as if it's brand new, but to me it's the fucking oldest thing I have.
Yeah.
And improv is like the opposite of that. It's
Right.
like whatever your idea is, however much you liked it, it's gone.
Yeah.
And to me, it's better training because I've done 1 million more reps than any stand-up has ever done. Because I do them live and then they go away, and then live and then go away. And I'm not fine-tuning certain words.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
fine-tuning my process of how to make everything funny that comes across my plate rather than which stuff is the funny stuff. It's like, no, it's a lens, not a certain thing you're looking for.
Yeah, it's not the collection of fish hanging from the thing. It's how you drag the net through the water. And now you can catch an abundance of fish every night, and they're different all the time, and you can catch and release because you know that it's going to come to you again.
Right.
You don't have to like cling to each idea preciously and keep it for 5 years. Yeah.
Totally.
Cool. Thank you so much for that question.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, I want to also say, I did Boom Chicago in Amsterdam for years, and I'm still friends with the owners. And one of the owners, Saskia Maas, recently started a project called Interacting, which is aimed at using improv classes to help people who are deeply on the autism spectrum to help them with life skills. And she has a son who's autistic, and he has hugely grown through using this. It's like,
totally.
Wow, just the practice of improvising, where everything changes and you have to be ready for new things, which is
it's exactly what life is,
right? And that's very hard for our friends with autism to make those rapid adjustments. It can be very almost traumatic or overwhelming, and that's where meltdowns happen a lot. But yeah, these people in these classes are able to foster this relaxation with changes of plans and with being ready for things. It's truly amazing.
Totally.
Yeah. So check it out if you're interested in that. Look up Interacting. Great.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Okay. This one says, any thoughts to share about building and releasing tension in improv? Relief theory of humor states that we laugh when something relieves psychological tension. So as improvisers, we would like to build enough tension so that when we release some of it, we can get a bigger laugh. But to me, it seems like a matter of style and taste. Some people just want jokes coming fast, but those laughs will be smaller. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think even those small jokes that come really fast are still building and relieving tension, just less of it. And so that's why the laughs are smaller. So it's like, yeah, the longer you wait, the more tension that you build, the bigger the balloon is, so that when you pop it, the bigger the reaction is.
Yeah.
So I think it is like, yeah, the longer that you wait, if you have a good thing that you're waiting for, like something to pay it off, then it does relieve a greater amount of tension. But even little jokes, I think, are still doing that. They're still going like, you thought it was this, but it's this.
Yeah.
There's always some sort of like misdirect or something that is that tension of confusion or anger or disagreement in the reality.
Yeah, this speaks to like the technique or the goal of resting the game and not just hitting. It's like you can only laugh when something is surprising you or it's the unexpected turn. So if you're only doing the joke or the unusual behavior, then very quickly that becomes the norm because we know that it's going to keep happening. So the tension building, as it were, is the unusual person doing something, then like calming down or exploring some other aspect, and then we see their game show up again, and it surprises us again. It can't surprise us if it's constant.
Right. And we know there's tension in the room because these two people fundamentally, because of the game, disagree on how things are supposed to go.
Right.
This unusual character wants to do their unusual thing so bad. And typically they'll be told, like, no, don't do that. Shut up. And they're like, okay.
Right.
I got to do my thing.
Right,
and like that build of tension for that character trying to stay quiet is huge. And also the tension of the person who's like, can you please behave at my wedding?
Right.
Like the tension of like, I know that you're not going to do this. Like there's so
I'm
much
nervous
tension
that
built.
my weird Uncle Bob is going to have another weird moment where he tries to take attention away from my wedding. Yeah. I will say this too, that in the arena of improv, more so than other comedy art forms like stand-up and sketch, there's another whole separate layer of tension and release, which is the audience doesn't know if the improvisers have it or not. Until you are, on the rails and you've shown them that, you know what you're doing or that things are going to be funny. So that's a tension and release. I feel like...
Why haven't they given me a joke in 30 seconds? I thought they were going to keep making me laugh.
Are they okay? Do they know what to say? Yeah.
Totally.
So that's, interesting. Great. Thank you so much for that question.
I love the theory of whatever. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, relief theory.
Interesting.
I haven't heard it called that.
Yeah.
All of that was like so interesting to me, but Also, not something that I'm consciously thinking of on stage. I'm
Right.
much more of a right brain improviser.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a left brain player, like that would be something to, if you want to approach it from that technical viewpoint, very cerebral. Okay. This is a question they say that skews more about the social scene of improv. They say, I'm currently transitioning out of class to feel out the indie scene and get reps in with my classmates. However, after 3 courses with many of the same folks, a smaller group of us are starting to have better on-stage chemistry and an easier sense of trust as opposed to some of the other classmates who are slower to pick up on the concepts we've been learning. I'm at a crossroads because I've become good friends with some people that I don't love to perform with. Is there any way to break off and form a team without feelings getting hurt? Or if it just plain sucks, is there an empathetic way to go about this? This is such a sweet question. And yeah, a good thing for you to think about and be aware of. What's your immediate take on this?
I think the best way to do it is just to like start the new thing and not end the old thing because of it. And then if the old thing dies because people are not interested, then that's okay. But I don't think that you should have to dim your own light to protect other people's feelings. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to do something that you're inspired to do, I think you should do it. And that's part of the learning process for all of us, that like everything isn't for me all the time. And this is an example of that or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying like start a practice group with both
Sure.
both groups of people. Yeah,
Why
why
not?
not? Yeah.
More and merrier.
Right. Yeah, and my thinking too is like I know that this seems so large in the moment because it's like the first practice group out of class or whatever. It's eclipsing your life. But as you continue through the improv world, there's going to be so many groups that come and go, so many shows you do. You're never going to include everyone all the time. Like, think of all the friends that we have in the improv community. You and I are doing this podcast together. That doesn't mean we're like excluding all of our other friends. It just means we're doing this creative pursuit together.
Right.
Just like you do Man Dog and I'm not in that. It's like everyone's going to have bubbles of things that they do and projects they work on. Feelings shouldn't be hurt.
Imagine how limiting it would be to never work with new people.
Right.
You know, you can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do understand the trickiness of like you're all in this class together. You're super tight socially with some of the people or emotionally with them, but their skills aren't really there. That's tricky, but it will fade away as you continue. And yeah, I like your idea of like start a practice group with them and with the other people.
Yeah, don't use this is something that maybe took me a little long to learn, is like don't use talent level or interest in improv as a judge of someone's quality of character.
Right.
Like they might still be a great person that you could be an awesome friend with. I have friends that I like love to perform improv with, but we're not very close.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we have the same sense of humor, but maybe a different way of operating in life.
Right.
Okay, cool. So here's where our Venn diagram totally works and here's where it doesn't. And I think that can be true for both sides. Maybe the people that you don't think are super funny are like really great friends and you want to keep that close.
Yeah, and maybe you can help ease their feelings by like continuing to socially hang out with them a lot. Like if they are invited to go to a museum with you, they'll feel included, even though you're quote unquote excluding them from the practice group.
Right.
But yeah, it'll all come out in the wash.
And it's good for everybody to enrich themselves.
Totally.
It'll be good for your friends who are not on the team that you also made new friends.
100%. Okay. How do you get over insecurities / imposter syndrome / anxiety in improv? I'm constantly overanalyzing and second guessing myself. I can't help but think that I'm not funny enough, especially compared to people I'm playing with. I'm always in that kid last picked in PE class mentality that I'm the weak link. Man,
so tough.
I know that feeling.
I still have it every day.
All the time. Yeah.
I think it honestly means that you're on the right track. Like you love this thing and you feel like, oh, I'm not as good as I feel like I know I could be. Then you're going to get great eventually.
Yeah.
You know, like, because you care about it and you want to do it. And Oh, it sucks to be picked last. And I auditioned for Herald teams for like 6 years, and all of my friends started making it as I did not. And it just feels so horrible. Like I was definitely picked last in my friend group by the whole theater. And people who like were the judges of that would then still like be nice. And I'm like, you don't like me. You know what I mean? It's a really hard feeling to feel judged in that way. But also I think the thing it taught me is that like it's not as personal to them as it is to you. Of course it's personal to you, it's about your life, but they're not like disliking you, they're just following what they enjoy.
Right.
And I think that's a hard but important lesson to learn.
Right. Yeah. And remembering also that like, you're probably way better, quote unquote, than you think you are or fear that you're not. Our inner demons are so loud, and we have to constantly be like, you know what? It's fine. As long as you love doing it, it also doesn't matter how good you are or how you are compared to other people. This is such an insanely difficult skill, and people move through it at different paces. I've watched people who were horrendous improvisers who I was like, they're never going to be good.
Yeah.
Over the course of like years and years, become some of my favorite improvisers.
Sure. Absolutely.
You gestured to yourself. I wasn't talking about you.
But I feel that way. Like I feel like I'm one of the more adept improvisers at the theater as far as like teaching and being able to articulate what this is that we do. But man, I would have never said that about myself. I felt exactly like this person.
Right.
So like I think again, it's like everybody deals with this.
There's a great look up online. There's a great YouTube like 5-minute piece by Ira Glass from This American Life talking about taste, and he talks about like when you're someone who has good taste, you tend to compare yourself to the people who are making the things that you love, even though you're starting out at it. So like what great bands sound like, or what a great movie is. But when you try to do it, it seems awful by comparison. And there's that chasm that exists until you catch up. And he's just like, don't compare. It's apples to oranges. Like you cannot compare yourself to the people who are on the other side of the journey.
Right.
It would be paralyzing.
I also love that in this, I love this whole, was it an article?
It's an article, and then there's like a YouTube thing that I saw where he's reading it and someone put graphics to it. Yeah.
One of my favorite things about it is he says that like, if you're good and you want to be really good, your skills will never catch up to your taste because you're always aiming for something high and never quite hitting it, because how could you, like everyone that has ever made anything in the world was hoping it would be a little better than it turned out to be. And as soon as you catch up to your taste, you're not very good anymore.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, oh, look, I'm exactly perfect. Okay. You're not. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And inspiration, by definition, is something that is sparking you from beyond where you are.
Yes,
yeah. So it's
totally.
aspirational by nature.
Yes.
So yeah, go
thing you
easy
have
on
to
yourself.
go easy on yourself is the biggest thing. It's like, I bet you other people don't think you're as bad as you do. And you might be projecting that onto, I did that for years of like, I don't know. No, people like you.
Right.
I don't know why I think that they don't, whatever reason that is for you, but it's, that critical inner voice is really tough.
And at the end of the day, we're not saving lives. Like there really is no stakes to this. Have fun. We're adults playing make-believe in a sandbox together.
Totally.
So like really be gentle about that. It's playtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the last thing I had to say was fall in love with the process, not the results. If you're like, I'm never good enough, of course you'll feel that way. And then you're going to feel that way during your improv. Like, I'm not good enough. This isn't good, which just isn't thinking about the thing that you're doing.
Right.
So if you can just like forget about if you're good or not and just like enjoy the moment, then you'll get much better.
Right. This person was a 2-questioner. So just
Great.
one more. How do you navigate other improvisers that you feel are, quote, stage hogs, those who railroad your initiations? I try to be generous, let others have their moment, and pick my moments of being, quote, selfish. But as I progress further into my improv education, I'm encountering people who are very comfortable taking up stage space. They have so much more experience than I do. Interesting. Yeah, this is a toughie that kind of never stops.
No.
It does get better, I think, the more you end up in like a realm of as people mature. Also,
Eventually, people don't want to see those people either.
Yeah.
My advice would be that like you can also do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like if someone comes on with a big crazy move, I will just make that crazy in the world, and I'll be like, "What an asshole!" Rather than be like, "Oh, I have to be quiet for the rest of the scene," and like kind of choose to improvise that. I just choose to improvise the other thing, that I'm just as big and brash and assholey as they are.
Right.
And now the scene is between two assholes, and it's like, "Excuse me, I was waiting in line. Are you just going to cut in front of me?" Everybody in the audience gets that you're giving a note to the improviser, and also they have to then play that truth rather than the truth that like they're with a meek person.
Yeah.
This
is also something that, if this is happening on a practice group or in a class, feel free to, on the side, email your coach or your teacher or pull them aside and be like, "Hey, have you noticed that so-and-so is kind of like railroading me?" I guarantee you that coach or that teacher will be sensitive to that. I'm guaranteeing it. I can't guarantee it, but I feel like 99%
if you bring it up,
of
who's
people,
going to ignore it? Yeah.
Right. And then that allows them to give that note to that person. And if they give that note to them enough times, hopefully they can massage it out. But that's a great way to accomplish that so that you're not the one having to handle it. But, have the coach be like, "Hey, man, you're walking into every scene and it's a little stage hoggy. And like, let's let that breathe. Let's give equal time."
Right.
I used to tell teams that I coached, like, to think of shows like a buffet line where it's like everyone should have their firsts before you come through for seconds. If you've already done a prominent scene, let everyone else's breathe before we see you again. The audience wants to get to know each of you as players.
Yeah, totally. And the show is about the ensemble.
Yes.
So like you just have to do it that way. Or else the audience won't like it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're kind of after, right? Is the audience enjoying the show we're putting on?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everyone who wrote in. And for those who haven't written in yet, it's yesalsopod@gmail.com. And we are happy to answer questions that you have. Anything is welcome.
I love it.
I love it.
We both love it then.
Well.
You love it more?
I mean, we can't both love it more. Only one of us can love it the most.
I concede. You love it the most. You love it the most.
Bye.
Bye.
If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.